Right. Thank you, Meoni, for sitting in with me for this interview. We are talking with Meoni from Team Idol. You were a participant for Team Idol in the beach showdown Frosty hosted last week. I would like to hear first things. I know that you are a well-known content creator, but I would like you to introduce yourself for those that may not know you. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you for this opportunity once again. And yes, my name's Meoni. I make YouTube videos majoritively for the past 11 years on 14 and feature all sorts of different things on YouTube. Basically, everything to do with Final Fantasy 14 news, events, and a lot of rewards as well that I showcase. So, yeah. And I sometimes do some streaming as well.
So you cover a little bit of everything. Does that everything happen to
Basically,
include
yeah.
PvP?
Sorry.
Does that everything happen to include PvP?
The PvP rewards, yes, definitely. And on streams, I definitely stream a lot of both the casual stuff when I can't be bothered to do the ranked, or the actual ranked when there is, kill two birds with one stone. You go into the ranked queue. I always try to get people who are watching the stream involved as well. And a lot of them are like, why didn't I do ranked in the first place? I was like, yeah, you see, you can get some nice adventurer plates at the same time as getting your other rewards as well from your series. So it's always nice when the two things happen at the same time. Unfortunately, that is not always the case with ranked. So I think that's one of the bigger problems with PvP and the ranked queue being sometimes less queued. At least on the EU side of things, a lot of people only do PvP when there's the series rewards. So that's one of my big issues with it. But yes, I try to promote as much PvP as I physically can because it's definitely the best form of PvP we have ever had in Final Fantasy XIV, especially if you compare it to the Feast, which was diabolically bad.
You were a feaster, right? You've been around for that long.
Yes. I've been around since the beta, and then eventually when they added PvP to the game, when it was just called Wolf's Den PvP, and you would be able to sleep people with hardly any diminishing returns. It was an interesting time, definitely an interesting time. The Feast was a step up from that, but it was still horrible. So Crystalline Conflict definitely changed my mind about PvP because I used to absolutely hate it, if I'm perfectly honest.
That's good to hear. As someone who I've been around for that long, but I actually did not bother to engage with the PvP until let me put out my feast experience in a nutshell. I queued twice, the queue never popped, and I never tried again. So
Yeah, that was the experience for the majority of people. The only reason I really got involved in the feast anyway was because of the Garo event, where
yeah.
you could get those items and the mounts and things, and that was before they changed that to obviously CC and Frontline. But yeah, we had to do an ungodly amount of queues to get the rewards, so it kind of opened the doors to what the feast was really like, and it was not great. It was not great in comparison.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the event itself. From what I understand, Frosty more or less figured out the team rosters and then gave you guys free reign on the rest. Did your team get to prep a little bit for the event? Did you get any practice as a team? Because I do know that lack of practice was a problem. At the very least, I know for Renan was a problem. I don't know about the rest.
Yes, the lack of practice. Basically, the way this worked is Frosty was like, "Hey, could you mention like somebody that you know from this list of people?" When they were basically seeding things, and I was like, "Well, I know Rin, and I know Jesse, and I know this person, and I know this person, and I know this person," and then as far as I know, it was just kind of random or whatever in terms of the team matchup. Our team did not even talk or meet really or decide what jobs we were playing until an hour before the actual event, which is
Oof.
totally on us. I definitely tried to promote the idea of maybe we should do some, some scrims or something. I know Rin had a lot of time during the weeks where he basically couldn't do that, right? He's a busy content creator. A lot of these people are, myself included. But I do think it was probably at our detriment, really. I think we would have had a little bit better chances rather than being incredibly destroyed on the first match. Basically, it was not the best presentation of any of our potential skill, but there was also another thing that I had like as a little bit of a strange difficulty to comprehend, in my opinion. Why were so many EU players placed into the same team? That is my big question, because there was a lot of American only teams, and then you had a couple here and there mixed in. But I
Mhm.
think that our team, especially, could have been distributed a little bit between other teams, and we would have probably had a bit of a better attempt, let's say. I'm not going to blame it all on lag because that would be a terrible thing to do. But the
But it was
latency
a
was,
factor.
yeah, okay, here's an example. I press guard, 3 seconds later, guard works.
Yeah.
And that's fine if it's like only one of you that has that, handicap. But when there's like 4 out of 5 of your team that have that issue, it's like, well, we're not going to last more than a few seconds, and we didn't. But that's the only thing I would say that was a thing I would criticize. But it's very hard to criticize something that is so powerfully good for the community.
Yeah.
So
I don't.
yeah.
I haven't actually considered that the majority of your team was EU, because teams that I have interviewed so far did have a couple of Europeans and Australian, but they haven't been majority anywhere. I play in the Japanese data centers. I absolutely understand what the horror of playing with
Oh
more than
yeah.
150 MS is. So I feel for you guys. I hadn't actually considered that. I'm glad you brought it up.
it was definitely noticeable, and obviously, I'm not gonna use that as, oh, that's why we lost. We also did not have any time, practicing, and that's the biggest thing, right? We could have practiced. We could have shown up at least once in the week before or something and had a little bit of an experiment of what works and what doesn't work with the latency. So that again is on us. That's not Frosty or anyone else's fault at all. But it was just a few things that sort of added up. But overall, it was a fantastic experience, and we didn't mind getting annihilated instantly. It just, yeah, it was just not as long of a match as I would have wanted to present. If we're going to lose, let's lose in style. Um, yeah, it would have been nice if we had a bit more communication as well. I'm not going to point fingers at anybody, obviously, because people are busy. But in our
Mhm.
team, we didn't really like talk about what jobs people had access to until, like I say, the day before, and then we didn't get a final answer until like an hour or two before the actual event. So there was me going, do I need to pay money to boost another job, or how's this going to work? And then I ended up playing Dragoon, which is what I would prefer anyway. But yes, I don't think everybody was in the same boat on that one, unfortunately.
A lesson for a future event, if there is a future event, which I do
I
believe
hope
everybody
so.
who, yeah, I believe everyone who has, I've talked to about this event is like,
Mm.
okay, when is the next one? I am sitting on my hands waiting for the next event. And
Same.
Frosty, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, in addition to that event, what they could do is more. I know this is a lot of work, right, on top of Frosty's schedule and production schedule, but it would be nice to have like two of these events at least per year, and they
Oh,
could
that would
have
be
one
incredible.
that's like a summer bash and then a winter bash. And that would be really interesting. Similar to how, Awesome Games Done Quick, like the speedrunning charity, they do a summer Games Done Quick, and they also do Awesome Games Done Quick in the winter. I think it
Mhm.
would fit perfectly for this kind of charity event as well.
CC Ugly Sweaters Edition.
Yes, exactly. You've got it.
I would absolutely love that because I love the entire vibe of the event. I love how much fun everybody was having. I love the theming. I love everything, and I'm really glad that all of you showed up for it. Um, since you mentioned that you guys did not get the prep that you felt that would have benefited you, you mentioned losing in style, which is a mentality I very much like. Um,
Yeah.
after that first match, what was the mood like? Were you guys feeling
Oh,
okay?
yeah, absolutely. It was super positive. Like a lot of people, everybody there, at least that I can recall, nobody said anything overly negative or anything. Everybody was there just for the charity more than anything, right? We wanted to come together and promote some good. Even if we ended up, which we did, absolutely getting annihilated within a few seconds and, the losers bracket lost immediately. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. We don't care because at the end of the day, the event raised what, $20,000+ in under 6 hours for Games for Love. And
Yeah,
it doesn't matter at that point. Everybody was in high spirits just to be included. And the fact that I was reached out to and Rin was reached out to, I'm sure. I mean, I can't speak on his behalf, obviously, but we were quite honored to be included, especially when majoritively a lot of events are quite exclusive because of, the world race. It's majoritively North American players, right? For the
mhm,
most part, the EU teams, stuff like that. There's less of us, basically. To have the option is really nice and to showcase such warm positivity within the 14 community, especially as of so much drama has happened recently that
yeah,
I'm not going to go into. And that's something that's synonymous with Final Fantasy 14, be it the hashtag on X or any other social media platform. Searching for Final Fantasy always brings up the negative, so it was nice to be able to have something to shout about from so many creators that was so positive, regardless of if people gave a poo or not about PvP. They could still all agree that, this was a nice thing to do and people were showing the best side of themselves. So yeah, I think it's a hugely positive but also required thing at this sort of point in time, especially
it
during Dawn
definitely
Trail.
is. Yeah. I feel like understanding the scale of how much good this event did is kind of hard because it happened in such a short span of time for such a gigantic amount of money.
Yeah, it was actually very, I mean, it's surprising. To say surprising is such like a almost negative term to say that, because we shouldn't be surprised by the overwhelming like support of people when it comes to their generosity, because Final Fantasy 14 has always had some really good eggs, who play it.
Yeah.
Especially, if you look in the past, like compared to other game communities, I'd say that 14 probably has some of the best people, best mannered, well mannered, positive individuals. So it didn't surprise me, but it also surprised me that so much so quick, which is why I think they need to do a lot more of these.
I will love that. Leading on to the next question, I believe I asked you earlier, was there a moment that stood out to you in the tournament? A good or a bad one that stuck to your memory? It can be in your team, player interaction, another game, team's play, whatever it may be that stuck to you.
I think the big standout sort of neutral moment for us was the sudden realization as a team. We had this like split-second game plan of, oh right, we'll go after, I think the first match, I forget because it was over a week ago, we were like, oh, we'll go against the summoner. We put everything into that and then realized in that split second, the delay on abilities. So nothing really worked. By the time you were pressing something, the other team had already reacted to that and also reacted back as well, retaliated. So it was just kind of that sudden, oh balls, we are so screwed because of that lack of preparation. But it was funny, and I wish you could have heard our voice comms because it was just brilliant. We were just laughing all the way through. That was the real standout moment for me, just realizing, yeah, we're effed, but at the end of the day, who cares, right? At least we'll go out quickly. and people will forget about us really quickly. And at least we will have, achieved at least contribution, right? It's like the you have contributed badge more than anything. But yeah, apart from that, like the big standout thing is again, like over 20K raised for charity, as an actual event. That did surprise me, but like I said, not surprised me, and I shouldn't be surprised by it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a really good event, just fun to take part into.
I just took a moment to check the brackets to remember who was your first matchup. And I mean, it's not exactly surprising. You guys went against Gongaga on the first one. Gongaga went on to be
Oh,
the,
well, there you
the
go then.
champion. So yeah, they I actually interviewed them right before I interviewed you,
Okay,
and
yeah.
they took this very professional, very okay, we're here to do a job kind of mentality. So
Really?
you guys went against the big boss on your first match. Don't feel too bad about what
So
happened.
basically, what you're saying is we went against Ultimate week one blind with no preparation.
Pretty
Well,
much, pretty
yeah,
much.
that's fine. At least we can use that as another excuse on top of our lag excuse and whatever else we've got at this point. Keep it piling up. It makes us look slightly better at the bottom of the rubbish pile.
I wouldn't go as far as to say you the rubbish pile. You guys did what you could, and again, you had a lot against yourselves, but you were there to have fun. You were there to contribute.
Absolutely.
It was a blast. Um, I want to go on to my next question, which is a little bit unrelated to the tournament. You
Okay.
already mentioned that you have quite a bit of extensive experience in this game because you have been playing it for so long. What is your impression of PvP in this game at this point? Is it a positive one, negative one? Don't hold your punches.
So PvP in this game, from a development standpoint, I think they have answered a lot of the questions that people had from the feast, and especially before then. They have tried to bridge the gap from a development standpoint, I believe, to try and make it more accessible to players. That was the first thing, especially with only having to be a low level and not having to complete all of this other charadery. It's just basically go and do your grand company stuff, and there you go. Hey presto, you have access to PvP if you do a quick quest. So I
Mhm.
think that's good from an accessibility point, and I think that they've done a good job for the most part on trying to thin down the amount of button bloat for PvP, because you don't want a 22 button rotation in PvP. It's just not going to work. So I think a lot of influence seems to have been taken from MOBAs and other successful games of that type of genre, basically other PvP games that are on the market. I
Mhm.
do think obviously balance is always going to be something that is incredibly difficult, even when you've separated PvE from PvP, because originally an ability was just an ability. The best thing they ever did in regards to PvP was go, right, we're drawing a line in the sand. We're putting PvP abilities on this side and PvE on that side, and we're going to balance them separate, which was obviously a benefit for both types of content. I do think the more jobs that are added to the game, the harder that's going to be for both sides. And I do think it's going to be very difficult without putting a lot of the budget into both of those things, right? If you're going to keep PvP to the point where you want it to be presented as an esport, which is originally, if I remember correctly, the whole initiative for Crystalline Conflict, which is why
Mhm.
Square Enix invested so much into it at the time, because Yoshi P wanted people to be on a stage and people to be interested in that. I do think there is a lot to be said about that, though. I don't think, as much as they have tried, I don't think there is as many people that care about watching PvP than actually playing it. I think that, yes, there are some numbers, but a good portion of people will tune out of that content when it's shown. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think that's a lack of marketing and a lack of incentive on Square Enix's part. I'm not really sure what I could recommend or come up with ideas right now for how they could better incentivize watching it. Because that's a big part of an esport. You can't continue to maintain a budget for something like that into a PvP mode if you're pushing that hard without, getting a return for that. If you walk around FanFest, like I've been to two FanFests so far, and obviously watched others online, every time where there is the PvP tournament, which is usually on obviously the main stage, people go and get their merch during that time. There is a good portion that do stay, but a lot of people choose that moment to go and do the venue, right? If you watch the Twitch numbers, the viewer count, it drops when there's
Yeah.
PvP on. Unfortunately, I'm not sure of the solution to that, but it's so much more fun to play than watch, and I think they've got to find a way of making it look more impactful with this engine. That might be really, really hard, because I think they're pushing PvP to the limits with latency as it is, right? Even if you have, 12 millisecond ping, if you live inside the servers, essentially, you've still got that kind of weird clunky feeling with certain abilities.
Yeah.
Like you press something and it's not tactile. It doesn't happen when you press it. If you compare that to League of Legends, or you compare that to Smite or something even, right? You press an ability, that ability goes off. It
Yeah.
goes off and it does what is supposed to on a tooltip. That doesn't happen in 14, unfortunately. So they've done a good job, but I think without a lot more um a lot more of a budget and a lot more marketing behind it, I don't think PvP can really evolve much further than it currently is.
I have jokingly said in the past that say that Square Enix decided to uproot PvP as it is as a whole, gave it purpose made servers, and marketed it as its own product that is made for playing PvP instead of being a weird growth on the side of the PvE side of the game, they would make bank. But that is just my uneducated take
You
on
mean
it.
like as a separate IP, sort of like similar to how
No,
like
say
Overwatch
that
from WoW, that kind of thing, or no? Okay.
no, something like an add-on to your subscription or something like that, so that
Oh right, okay.
it remains a part of your game, but it already is not a part of the game itself. You
So you mean
queue.
like a private server, basically, like on a server selection screen, you just have PvP servers, that kind of
Mm,
thing?
something like that. So like when your character is the same, but you decide whether that day you are working on PvE or working on PvP, and both backends work their own way. We know that there is some clunkiness to the PvE side as well, but the how the game is built works to its advantage, right? But not so to
Mm.
PvP. That's kind of what I think you mean by clunkiness. Am I
Yes,
mistaken?
you are correct. Yes. Um, There's also a solution to that that is also there that they're not utilizing. If you remember, I don't know if you recall this, but was it a year or was it a few months? I can't, my judge of time travel, I have no idea. Anyway, a while ago, Square Enix did a live testing of cloud data centers. Do you
Oh
remember that?
yeah, yeah. I actually
Now,
wasn't around for it, but yes, yes, yes.
right. So if you went around for it, basically the latency on those servers was negligible, and people were playing from different parts of the world. And we were having a pretty interesting time on the cloud data center. There wasn't really any lag, and it was very surprising. It kind of felt like their alpha version of what if we had world server. So
Mm,
I think if they're going to do nothing else with that, since we haven't heard any results from that, they said they were going to publicly talk about the results of that, but they have not. It would have been nice if we got some feedback on that, but also if they're keeping that up their sleeve and they don't want to do cross data center stuff, which I think they should, they
mm-hmm.
could always do cloud PvP servers that expand or subtract depending on how many people during a PvP series or season rather, are interested. And that way you wouldn't have people, immediately having to go to Chaos or to Dynamis or wherever it is for those ranked things. Because what they've currently got is a system where we're trying to promote population on unpopulated or lower population data centers, which is an
Yeah.
admirable goal, but it doesn't fix the innate problem of Party Finder anyway. Because the real problem with population is the fact that people go to an data center specifically for raiding. Therefore, that is the server that people either have their characters on or they all travel through the data center. So having separate servers should be possible with a cloud system and shouldn't incur too much extra cost, because we're not asking for a permanent server location. We're just
Yeah.
asking for something ultra low latency that can be attached, like you say, like added on to the game. It's weird we haven't seen anything back from that yet, honestly.
If you
Good
want
idea, though.
something depressing to think about, I just looked up when it happened because I remember this is relevant to the conversation, I promise. I was actually in Uruguay, a South American country, when the cloud server thing happened. I was visiting family, and I
Mhm.
got an extremely unpleasant experience of playing Final Fantasy XIV with 450 ms.
Oh,
Yeah, that is the correct reaction.
wow.
I know for a fact that people on the southern hemisphere, for everywhere, would appreciate the existence of cloud servers, but this for this particular uh, purpose, it would be the perfect solution. I'm glad you brought it up. The
Hmm.
depressing thing that I was mentioning is that it is going to be 2 years since we last heard from that. I would love to hear back from Square Enix about that. Even just to say, you know what, we crunched the numbers and it's too much. We're not gonna do it. Heck, you guys. So, like, I would
Yeah,
just like
just
an answer.
I would just like them to say it wasn't feasible. Our partner or something pulled out. Well, not even that. Just it wasn't going to happen, guys.
Hmm.
Give up. Just give up. We've nah. We're not doing that anymore. It's like, oh, okay. But to not hear anything is worse.
Yeah.
You know, it's like give us the cloud servers. It'd work. But I'm personally a believer that outside of that idea, that we should have um, cross party finder
Yeah.
within our entire region between data centers, because that would fix. Because I don't know if you're aware of, like, on EU, I'm sure it's probably the same with NA, right? Where everybody goes to a certain server and your own party finder becomes dead because your data center is effectively dead for PvE. It's
Yeah.
really annoying when you're trying to recruit for the next Savage tier. Really annoying. Yeah.
But I feel it's not such a different conversation that it's not relevant to the point, and I really appreciate that you brought it up because I hadn't actually thought of it. I've considered my idea of, like, separate the product, sell it as an add-on, something like that, where the solution technically should be that much more simple. So hopefully someone for Square Enix is listening, please.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the best solution is the one that is the least effort and costs the least,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right in front of you. I mean, we learned that with content in the game, with recycled content. So that's how we ended up with Diadem and Eureka.
True. True.
So, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna move on to my last question, but not before thanking you again for giving me this much time.
No, thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you very much.
So, I feel like I already know the answer from what you mentioned about possible winter bash, but would you participate in more PvP related events, official or community held?
Absolutely. Sign me up immediately. I would love to. The camaraderie surrounding the event is worth more than the event's results, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people share the same opinion, that we would rather just have something positive to represent this game's community than a billboard or, a hashtag that's awful. I had to bring that up because it's just a never ending, slippery slide
Meme.
of garbage, and it's nice
Yeah,
to have something that's shining in that garbage. It's nice. And hopefully the developers of the game and publisher look at that and go, huh, that's a good idea. you know
it is.
I would definitely do it all over again. Absolutely. Even if I die in the first 5 seconds, I don't mind. That's fine. You always have to have somebody that takes the fall, right? You need that person, otherwise it will go on for 20 hours. So yeah.
I do find it funny that you should mention there's always the need for a fall guy. I feel like a lot of teams did not go in. They were there for the fun of the event, but
Yeah.
as it became clear that there is always a narrative to this kind of event, as I mentioned, I interviewed Gongaga right before interviewing you. They were kind of surprised at being made the big boss beat, even though because of their preparation, that was unavoidably what they were going to become. And they were also surprised at the fact that Chocobo and Snackables were kind of like the word
The underdog?
the underdog, exactly.
Yeah.
So like it was funny from the spectator side to see all of that narrative
Mhm.
develop. Um, it was
It's like
very
watching
enjoyable.
WWE or something, isn't it?
Yes,
Rooting for the
exactly.
face and the heels. You're waiting for the underdog to pop out and pull something out of the hat that you didn't expect. Yeah, I think it pulled all of that off and more. The production side of this event was better, if I would say better than a lot of other video games that we could mention that are also MMORPGs
Yeah.
with community-based events. And I would also argue it was better organized and looked better than some of the official Square Enix stuff. Absolutely. 100%.
I
And it can
think
only get better from there.
I think Frost is going to be very happy to hear that because he and his staff and everybody involved on the back end worked their absolute asses off to make
Oh
sure it
yeah.
was a quality event.
You could tell. You could tell from everything from, stinger, toast notifications in the, or whatever you would call them, stingers that show up on screen for the charity. That was
Yeah.
so neatly done. Like the, adding of things, the segues, the things, the commentators were fantastic. They did a fantastic job. Everybody they had involved worked their ass off, and it really showed. It was fantastic to witness and also be a part of, Yeah. Incredible stuff. We need more of them, and we need more of them at least twice a year, at least. And next time, here's a suggestion: either mix the teams up even more, right? So when somebody goes, "Oh, I really want to play with such and such," do the opposite when you're seeding them, or what you do is you play on Oceanic. And then you get the North American and in EU people on exactly the same playing field, and it will just be an absolute disaster in terms of latency, but it would be funny. You've got to do something like that at least once, you know.
Square
But
Enix,
yeah,
please give us
more of the
cloud
same.
servers before that happens. I do not want to play on that massive ping again.
Yes, you do. Sure, you do. You love it, really. Yeah.
All right. I am gonna sign off now. I'm going to take a couple of seconds to show your socials on screen. And I want to sign off by again thanking you profusely for taking the time to sit through this interview with me. Um, I'm very, very, very happy to hear what your thoughts on this because, as weird as this may sound, coming from interviewing players for a tournament where people got placed in such and such way,
Yeah.
what I am interested in the end is the experience of everyone involved, and it was a blast hearing your thoughts on this.
I mean, when you put something on show that is that enjoyable to take part in and watch, as I've already said, in terms of comparison to an official event like at FanFest, this blew it out the water. With sheer viewer numbers, I think anyway, if you combine everybody's Twitch channels at least, and also for a good cause, which is something that they did not at FanFest, but. It's just nice. And I think you're right. If you can interview somebody that's like your first place and also interview someone like myself that's in the last place and have an equal sort of experience from both, that they both bloody loved it, then you've got a successful event in terms of organization as well.